All right, so welcome back. In the last video, we were able to install and get NestJS running. And in this video, we're going to be starting with the users module. And in this user module, we're going to be interacting with the database to store the user, to retrieve the user. And in the next video, we're going to be talking about the the authentication of the user. So we're going to be doing the user module right now, and to do that we're going to create a folder, and in the folder we're going to call it modules. So I'm going to call the folder modules, and this will hold all um, our business logic for the application is going to stay in that module. So the first thing that I want to do is create a folder, and in the folder we call it user. And right here we want to create a user entity. So we call it user.entity entity.ts. We call it user.entity.ts, and right here we want to use type ORM for our entity. And what entity means, entity is a model. Like we want to create a database object, or a database model using the type ORM, and the type ORM can be configured to work with any database you want. Mostly relational database like MySQL and Postgres. But for this video, we're going to be using MySQL because that's what I have running on my local service. So right now, I'm going to open MySQL. If you don't have MySQL, you can have install it using your terminal. But I'm using MySQL from XAMPP. That's where I installed my own SQL. So let me just go ahead and start that service. So I have the service running now, and we can now go ahead and probably create a database. So I'm going to create a database, and we're going to create new, and right here we can just call it authentication service. So let's go ahead and save this. um be careful of the name because we're still going to use it. Let me just go ahead and rename this database to something better. Let's just use underscore right here. Let's just use it underscore. So we have that right now, and another thing we can now do is to install type ORM. So let me quickly get the command to install type ORM. So this is the command to install type ORM. This is for if you want to install it using Postgres, if you want to install it using MySQL, and if you want to use SQLite. But we are using the MySQL version, and we just need to go ahead and install it right here. So right here, let's just do install that. Let us just install that. Okay, so the installation is done now. Let's just close that. The installation is done. Let's go back. So we have type ORM and MySQL. So let's go back and create our users entity. So we're going to start with a class. So we're going to export a class, and we're going to call it user. And this year we want to extend the base entity. So extend base entity, and we want to start with an ID, and this ID is going to be a UUID. And after that, we want to have a colon of emails. I want to have password. Should we have password? Yes. Let's have a created that, and let's have an updated that. So let's import all this from type ORM. So right here we have the um, we have the UUID. Instead of using regular auto increment, we just generate a UUID. And another thing, everything looks fine now, just that for the password, I want to change some things in the password. So I want to, you know what? Let's just leave it like this. Let's just leave it like this. The only thing I want to do now is to exclude. We're going to use the exclude. And the reason why, okay, I think we need to install class transformer for that. We need to install a package for that. And the reason is whenever um we're returning the user object, we don't want to return the password for that user. Let's say we're making an API call to fetch the user object. We want to exclude the user's password from that user object. So that's why we need to use the exclude, the class transformer, the exclude from the class transformer. So I'm going to install the exclude right now. So I'm going to install the class transformer right now. Let me go ahead and with the installation. Let me see. So this is the command. So we've installed that. Um, so this should be exclude. Okay, so let's import that from the class transformer, and we've done that. What's the error here? Um, exclude on save. So we have this right here. We don't really need it. We don't need all those instructions. So you might have it, but I don't just like, uh, instead of if I'm working on a real project, I will just go ahead and for create some custom rule. But this is a tutorial, so let's just take that away. And we have the exclude right here. And yeah, so the next thing we want to do, we've created the user entity, but we still not telling our NestJS application that we've created an entity that should create a database for that, because we've not connect our application to the database. So to do that, we need to create like a type ORM class that will interact with our type ORM and our database and our application. So let's just go ahead and do that right now. So right here in our modules, let's just go ahead and create some shared folder. And right here, I want to create a type ORM folder. And anything that has to do with type ORM or any service relating to database, we're going to put it right here. So let's call this type ORM dot service dot ts. So right here, we need to specify our database host, our database port, our database user, everything relating to our database. So we can get started with that by creating a class that will interact with our type ORM. So this will be type ORM config service, and this one should implement the default type ORM settings, type ORM option factory, not that one, type ORM options factory. Okay, uh, no, okay. So this should be implement, not import. Implement, yeah. So let's just import that class. So this is the class, and in this class we need to uh, implement some interface for that. So we can do it like this. We can do it like this. We can have it like this. Then first we need to create those database variable in our env file. So because I'm using my local machine, my database is installed in my local machine. That means I need to use a local host for my database. So let me call this database host is localhost. And for my database port is for MySQL is always 306 3306. I guess that is the um, default. So on the username, let's just call this user. The user will be root. The password, we don't have a password installed, and the name of our database, like I told you, we need to keep that name safe the other time. So this will be authentication service, and basically I think this is all we need. And let's go back to our typo rm service, and right here let's go ahead and import that config service, so that we can use that config service to access the database, the config, the env values that we created. So this will be a constructor, and right here within the constructor we want to inject um, the config service. So this will be read only, and we want to import the config, and this will be config service. Remember, we declare the config service to be global. So let's just have something like this. And right here, let's just put our this to be empty. And right here, instead of throwing this, let's just return. So there are some data that we need to implement, that we need to specify. So the type, we are using a MySQL. You can see the different type of database that they support. So I'm using MySQL. Right here, we want to have our host to be the variables that we created the other time. So basically, this is just all we need to do. Let's just make sure that the variables names are correct. Okay, that's correct. And yeah, so this just goes ahead and look for any file saved as entity.ts, and just, you know, do something with it. And the next thing we can do is we can have a logger, so that when we log, when we can monitor everything that is happening, and we put login to true. And synchronize means that, do you want, when you're starting your application, you want to be making those changes immediately. So that's for that. I think we don't have any migration file, so let's just leave it at that. But if we have any migration file, we can say migrations, and we just do the same thing. This just look for any migration files, and we can have another thing called migration table, and we just call this type ORM migrations. And basically this is all we need to do. Now we need to link this to our app module, so that NestJS will know the type of database and have informations about the database that we're using. So I'm going to call this type ORM, and we're going to do uh, let's take out this first. And type ORM, I want to say use classes, which is this class that we created. So let's go ahead and import that class, and let's import this to type ORM. Now our NestJS knows that we have a database, and if I should go ahead and go to our database right now and probably refresh, we don't have anything first for now. Let me see. Let's see that if that's, yeah. So we have a problem right here. So there is a problem right here. Typo rm, probably with a variable name or something. with a variable name. Let me see. Um, this is not supposed to return a promise. That's number one. Let me use public to declare this as public. And this should not be a promise. I guess the AI was just giving us. Um, yeah. So that should not be a public. That's number one. What could be the other issue? We need to make this injectable so that we can inject it. So let's do injectable, and yeah. So let's see that. Yeah. So we have the file compiled now. You can see typo rm modules and config modules has been compiled, and if we should refresh now, we should be seeing we're still not seeing that table. Let me see. Um, yes, we still need to create a module that we're going to specify the entity in, and do some things, connect it with the and also connect it with the app module. So right now we can come here and come to and create a user module. So let's go ahead and create a user module. Um, user.module.ts, and right here let's just put the module this thing, and right here we can export that module, export user module, and right here we can import that type orm object that we created. So this will be type orm dot feature, and right here we call the user entity that we created. So yeah, we call the user entity that we created. Why do we have an error here? um let's just import that type orm. Yes. So let's just wait. Now let's check if we should have the database. We still don't have the user. Okay, we still need to connect this to the app module. So let's just go ahead and call the user module. Okay, so let's see that. Let's refresh. No table is formed. Let me just see why we have that. Looks like our AMV looks like the AMV is not working. Let me just return this and let me check. Let me just double check. Yes, we need to we need to point our app to actually know where the AMV is actually being saved. So I'm just going to do this and go parent directory. Just to get the parent directory, we can do something like this. Okay, just to get the parent directory, and right here we can now get where exactly the AMV is. So I'll say AMV file parts, that should be a string, and it's going to be get env. We're going to get it from we're going to create a custom function to actually get that for us. So we're going to create a custom function, and we can call it EPA or something. So this will just help us to dissolve where the ENV is and the type of ENVs that we have. So I'm going to create an EPA right here, and we can create another folder and call it common, where we just put anything that is common, and right here we can just call create some EPA class, and just let's do env.epa.ts, and I'm just going to copy and paste this code because this is a already made code. So this just check all the AMVs that we have, and we can copy this right here and come here and just get our AMV using that route that we created. So the next thing we can now pass to this is the location for our AMV, and let's just see that. And right now, let's see if we should have an error loading data from env. So let's say r e r r. So let's try that now. That's still working. So I think the issue is I had my env outside my project directory, outside the folder. So I've put my env and we're seeing it now. So another problem is we forgot to make this an entity, give it an entity decorator. So this will be users. So we should have that now. We should come back and have this. Yeah. So we have the users table right now, and you can see an ID, email, password. Probably let's just give it a name. Let's also give it a name. So this will be um, name. Um, name we could be nullable so that we just make it nullable. Now we have the users, and if I should refresh now, we have the name. So that's what that synchronize set to true is doing. So the next thing right now is to create a ground operation, the read, write, and probably delete or something. So we need to also do that right now. And yeah, so let's just go ahead and do that. The first thing we want to do is to create a service, a user service. So let's go ahead and create probably we can do the authentication first. So let's go ahead and create the authentication module. Let's call this auth module, and let's start by creating the let's say the auth service. So let's go ahead and create the auth service. We can also start by creating the details. So let's go ahead and say detail, and right now we're going to create like a auth dot detail.s. So basically what the DTO so basically what the DTO basically is doing is to help us structure how our request is going to be, how we want the data to be. It's just like when you are validating. So we can go to export, and we call the first one is register. So for the register endpoint, we want to create a DTO for that, and we want a public read-only email, and we want an email feed in our register object, request object, but we want to structure how the email should be like. For one, we don't want it to be empty, so it's not empty. So any uh, empty field that has the name of email will be rejected. So as a we don't want it to be empty, and we also want it to be email. So it's email. So let me see. Should be having this. Add or missing? No. We should be importing this from the class validator that we created. So what is this? Let's go and create a pipeline for the validation class. So app.use global pipes. and we're gonna say new validate. Okay, validation pipe, and true first. Let's just change this to transform is true. So yeah, that's all we need to do. Let me see what else, what else. I think we already installed class. Let me see. Which one? Okay, we installed the class transformer, not the class validator. So let's go and install that class validator. So this will be validator. So let's click that. That should install the validator. Yeah, so that has done. It's still installing. Yeah, that's done installing. Yeah, so we have the validators right now, so we can go ahead and continue validating our request. So the next thing we want to do is for the name. Let's say is the name should be a string must be a string, and it must not be empty, and we can call it name. Okay, that's that. And the next one is the password. The password should be a string, is string. It should not be empty. We want to have a minimum letter or minimum length of let's say minimum length of, let's say, 8. Let's just have it. So that's for the register. We can also use the opportunity to create the login. The login will be the same thing. Yeah. And the next thing, refresh token. Yeah, so these are the details we need for the authentication. And the next thing we can go ahead and do right now is to create service a service for a service. So we can come here and say um auth.service.ts. So let's just create this for now. Let's go to auth service, and right here we're going to go to export class, and we call this auth service. Okay, so authentication service, and right here we want to start by creating the registration endpoint. So we're going to call this public. This will be async, and we call it register. And right here we're going to pass the DTO that we created earlier. So we're going to pass the DTO. Let me just import it. And right here, we need to also import this user's entities, because the reports, after creating the user, we want to return a user promise. So let's just go ahead and import that into the constructor. And right here, let's just inject that user's repository into this constructor. So this will be inject repository. And right here, we want to have the user, and we don't need to give it a type of, yeah, it's okay like this. So right here, we can now go ahead and complete our operation on the user. So right now, the first thing is we want to check if, while creating a user, while registering a user, we first want to check if if the email has not been registered before. But before we do that, let's just go ahead and destructure the data from the body. Now we destructure those data, and right here we can say constant existing user. So we're going to get this is going to we're going to get a user right here, a user right here. We're going to say find one does not exist in this type. Let me see, we already extended the page user. um okay, okay. We can also use this, we can use this we can do it like this, because we already pushing that user. But if we want to do it like this, just need to wrap this in repo, in the repository, like importing the repository directly. So we do this, and you can see the error is gone. And right here, if we have that user, if we have an existing user, we want to throw a conflict error. So we're going to say conflict exception, conflict exception, and we have that user with this email already exists. You can give it any name you want. If not, we can go ahead and create a new instance of that user equal to new user. Okay, so we can now go ahead and declare the variables in the structure of the user object, and we can now constant. We can just go ahead and save that user. We can say await this dot save this user, and we return that user. Now we've created an endpoint that creates a user to our database. So we need to create a controller for that so that we can interact with this service. So user controller dot ts. So we need to create a controller right now, and right here we need to actually keep it simple, and we can say export class user controller. Okay, and right here we can go ahead and first of all create a post request. So this will be a post, um, and the name is going to be register. We're going to have the method, which is register. So register, we're going to collect some basic things like the body of the request. So we're going to import body, and this will be the register DTO that we created the other time. So we have that, and right here we can just um, constant, we wait for that user, create, use that function. And one thing right here, we need to import the user service. We need to import the user service. So we can import the user service like this, because we need to actually use it. Okay, so we have the user right here, and we can return the user. Okay, so all this seems good right now. One more thing, we need to use the controller decorator, and we call this auth. Okay, so we need to create a model that will hold everything together. So user.module.service, so that anywhere we need to use the user service, we can just import that module, and everything that comes with that module is being imported. So let's go ahead and call that module. So let's use the module decorator. Let's explore that auth module, and let's just come here and import some few things. So right here we want to import the type ORM like we did the other time, and we want to import the user's entity from that. Import the user's entity, and the next thing, we need to specify the controller that we want to be using, which is the auth controller, auth controller. Let me see, what do we save this? This should be authentication controller, um controller. Okay, so the next thing right now is to put in that service. So this will be auth service. This will be auth service. This will be auth service. And yes, this is basically all we need to do. And right here in our auth module, let's go and import that auth module. Okay, so let's see. Let's our if our app compile. Yes, so our app compiled successfully, and you can see You can see we have the auth module controller right there. So the next thing is for us to actually test this out. We need to test this out. So I'm just going to use create a new documentation, blank documentation. I'll call this auth YouTube YouTube auth. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is to come here, create a new request. And right here, let's call it register. Register, and right here we use the base URL, the base URL, which is the 4000, and right here we can call this auth. Let's just go ahead and call this auth. Let's send this. We don't have a route for, we have register. Okay, so you can see we need to pass an email and the validation messages and the type of validation messages we have. um okay, sorry, let me just bring my postman down here. I didn't know that you guys can see it. Okay, so you can see the postman right now. You can see our postman right now. So I created a folder and the request, and you can see the validation response that we got.